Okay, now this video needs to be made as a follow-up. Then I need to stop making videos, get some work done, start posting some news, and start looking at some other things. But with regards to all these people in RVs, a certain percentage of them are not on hard drugs. And some of these areas have actually legalized marijuana, so labeling a pothead, a junkie really doesn't work. So, how many people have skills that are just broke as hell? They have skills, they have ambition. I've mentioned this before, years back. I've mentioned it in Portland. So it's like a reality from 1984. We have the party members and the non-party members. It's like we're on our way to that, along with the surveillance society. You are being watched by CCTV. And think about all the drugs people are exposed to when they're when they're in the streets. And I'm not saying that you're totally removed from the ills of society going off grid in certain realities. But in the city, as a homeless person, where there are no walls, let me tell you about that social experiment, what I learned as I studied my own mind and faced my own misery. See, I pulled myself up in that experience in Portland where I was living in a homemade teardrop camper, but first, just the back of my canopy. It was interesting. No one's even offering me a place to park. I became more aware of the stereotypes as time gone. I was a little shocked that some people would actually go to certain judgments. But then, of course, there's the political stuff too. Controversial ideas. I started looking around at others. Talked to a few homeless when I was parking around Lowerhurst. Talked to an old man. There's that video on my channel still. He lost his home, some sort of a tax issue, something with the county. Um, Very tragic. So there are people that have ended up homeless, that didn't end up homeless because of drugs and alcohol, because of some major economic crisis. Now that happens, also short of jobs, and plus, oftentimes men or women will go their own way, and they may become travelers, for example. It could also be said it's a rite of passage. It could be said that even I moved around a lot in my younger years. There was a real lack of traveling or really any long-term off-grid thing. So when I first went off-grid in the county, hours from here, known as Costilla, which I call the Forbidden County, find out why at offgridcode.com. They changed their land use code. What was legal 10 years ago, it changed, even 5 years ago. But the point is I got my first taste of freedom from the city, then went back to the city. That was the self-proclaimed, okay, I'm in my vehicle. I'm trying to do the off-grid thing in the city, but at a time where the city was going through a lot of stress, a lot of new arrivals, rent going up, so there was a space issue. This was not something that I knew going back. Would I have changed my mind had I known? Perhaps. In the end, I feel I was meant to go back to Portland, meant to go through that experience, meant to survive that experience by doing media and bringing back my show, even if there's a little bit of humiliation involved in embarrassment by talking about not having a place to park and going, well, people would really like my content more if I didn't sound like I was whining about my situation. But I always drop it here and there. Folks, I'm putting out this information. It's a little startling that I'm feeling this type of judgment. So I studied it some more, felt it going deeper into the experience. And you look at others that are facing even greater levels of judgment because they look even more because they haven't showered for, and I was showering, if not every day, every few days at a certain place. So I was functioning the best of my ability and started posting news for a website during that period. So I had a number of things to keep me thinking about things, even if I didn't have typical walls. And when possible, I would take the teardrop camper outside of the Portland area and look for a green spot to land, which I found was not in heavy supply, despite my own perception of my home state as a green state. But to get into the deep of the green seemed to take hours and hours and hours and hours, costing gasoline and having vehicular performance issues. I was pulling that teardrop camper, made with a friend at the time in a 1985 Toyota pickup. not four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive. So pulling that thing that was built up on a Harbor Freight trailer. So there was a sense of empowerment that I experienced halfway through it, through the building of that, and then making money for that through some Craigslist jobs with someone else at the time. And then much later, giving that away to a friend's family, who's still my friend today, and moving on to Colorado, and then experiencing a number of adventures that led to the current. But see, even in that period of me moving and going to different places in Colorado, that was unnecessary money spent on gasoline. Sure, I saw Salida, I saw Crestone. I went up to just outside of Denver, Netherland, and even passed through Boulder. What a dense place that is. Always chuckle when people suggest I go to Boulder. Big cities aren't for me. That was a major dense bottleneck. Grand Junction, even though it's Colorado, it didn't seem like the most conscious place. So I did a lot of traveling. And what I'm saying is there are people that are on the move, and they're spending resources that they can't really afford to spend. What is it, 5 miles of the gallon, 10 miles of the gallon for an RV? I'm sorry, 5 or 6. Currently have RV issues at the moment. So the issue is society with its little 1984 reality, these people over here and these people over here being stereotyped and not trusted and kind of, left to their own. And hey, oh, maybe you can go get some bread at the church, maybe a voucher for a bus ticket. And some of that helps people that are really down and out in the city, doesn't really empower people to get beyond nor getting your GED. There are other things that are more important to empowering someone. Now, I'm speaking more so for the people that are kind of in limbo, that are in these RVs. And some of them are at retirement age, or some of them are not just travelers, on a temporary level, but they're seeking. They're seeking. And other than RV parks, $500 per month, um, there really isn't a whole lot of places to go. There's BLM land. Then, of course, you have to put the gas in the vehicle to get up in there, and that could take hours from a major area. So a lot of these cities and communities, somehow, whether someone's in a vehicle or maybe doesn't have a vehicle, common theme, obviously, people that are able, willing, creative, intelligent, not on drugs, hard drugs, um, and maybe a little bit of mental illness, but not something that's so far out in some cases that it can't be reeled back in by directing them to something positive. Okay, because it's more than housing. Okay, it's saving lives. It's saving people from the bottle. And AA and NA can only help those that are willing to adopt their belief systems to that which is purported by AA and NA. And it's unfortunate that the criticized elements of the 12 steps provoke straight up anger from those that believe they benefited from it, instead of opening up their consciousness and realizing not all humans are the same. Not all humans need that type of repetition. Repetition. You're powerless. You're powerless. You're powerless. Some people actually, when they're already at the bottom, acting like they're powerless, need to get the opposite affirmation, that they're powerful, that they're wanted, that their message is important, whether it fits into the book or not, that their story is important, that their ideas are important. Real recovery for someone that went through a brief experience in the late 1990s in Portland, Oregon, at the age of 19 and 20. And had my brief break from it and then reinvestigation. It was all around this time of 9/11 and after 9/11. It was a massive time of soul searching. When I found alternative media or independent media, access television, that changed everything. Purpose was found. Um, Reading and absorbing knowledge, though, had already started by 2001, 2002. So it was a process and it was building. But by imagination, the 90s, especially with the Matrix movie, and looking at that from a Gnostic perspective before I even knew who the Gnostics were the archons or things of that nature. But my consciousness was already first looking at that. And then 9/11 happened. And then within my own consciousness, as we saw this empire expand, as we saw the police state go up, as I learned about the government bringing drugs into this country, specifically heroin. There are a lot of heroin junkies out there. Ooh, we have a big heroin epidemic and Oxycontin right now as we see another troop surge in Afghanistan. See, but the knowledge set me free. And I remember giving a brief talk where there was a group of recovering folks and making a statement like that, just kind of feeling their eyes roll because it was really centered around like a certain type of sharing. So what I'm saying is the city has services, so to speak, but the true rite of passage and then going through, which the traveling phase is a part of that, where people in some cases, and it is somewhat Buddhist like, okay, no more all these material possessions and all this stable life. Now into the world of chaos, but through chaos, order, and I don't mean an Illuminati sense, in a spiritual sense, I guess. Shaking things up and then letting things settle where they will. Removing yourself from a very comfortable situation to a uncomfortable situation, seeing how you react and meeting new people, experiencing new things, overcoming fears of certain regions, traveling. That is normal for humans to do, to migrate. So some people end up on the path to homelessness because they're on a natural human migratory pattern. It's not in their nature to be sedentary and work full time under fluorescent lights at Kroger. It's just not in their nature. I've done that. And I've worked at restaurants. I worked at GNC once back in 2000, but restaurant stuff was about 10 years, probably at least 6 of them, even one here locally. So I've done that when it's been necessary. But really, the last few years of my life has been marked by a greater sense of independence by what I do online and surviving where I am despite pretty much the end of most of my YouTube income, which was half of my income just several months ago. How do I survive that? I'm not out at the casino. I'm not out buying unnecessary things. It's only necessities, land payment, things of that nature. But it took a while to get to this place because I believed in myself. I believe others can do even greater. Let's talk about the skills they have, from mechanics to people that can build things. So what if, and we'll bring back, I'm going to leave you with this because this is a model that different communities and cities can adopt. Let's say someone knows how to build a website. Let's say you have a group of different people with different skills and they each have something to contribute and someone else can build. You create an online store. Don't you think it's odd they have prisoners, right? Manufacturing license plates, jeans, yeah, slave labor, but yet you have an untapped labor pool that just isn't fitting right into society. And so they're living on the streets. There is an alternative to Section 8 housing, and people need to get outside the welfare box. Because when they get outside the welfare box and they look at the really empowerment spirit, the American spirit, let's go there. That's what needs to be utilized. And that's what's being suppressed, the natural American spirit, to build, to prosper, to not be taxed to death. And the idea of wars meaning something and being about defending our freedoms. Well, I guess when that goes, other aspects of society are going to go as well. But we won't jump topics too far. So, what can cities and communities do with empty spaces to relocate people that aren't going to be attacking, raping, robbing their fellow person? There's obvious ways they can screen people and give people a place to get some coffee. Some areas it's going to be a little bit more difficult. I've said it before, there seems to be a higher than average mental illness ratio in cities like Portland and perhaps other major cities. And I'm telling you, I think some of that is induced by the effects of being homeless in the city and letting them take them to a dark place. Some of them can be pulled back, some of them can't, unless they themselves are doing some serious hard work. And people have the freedom, folks, in this nation to move or be homeless wherever they want. So the other factor that is difficult for societies, especially cities like Portland, certain cities and places can really draw the crazy, the fringe, be they homeless or not. Be they homeless or not. Portland's one of those places now. This is why people need to think outside of just hanging around the inner cities, reconnecting with nature, building projects. They have something called, it's off Clinton Street. They have an office. It's like a green spaces kind of a thing where people build. And what I see also in a lot of these intentional communities, a lot of things revolve around a man's ego or a couple's ego and their agenda and their nonprofit. And there's a lot more people could do out of an organization to build things for those that aren't officially a part of an organization that just need something to do. And people driving their vehicles around, right? A lot of you are against the idea of excessive amount of driving and fossil fuel usage, $5 the gallon in RV. I mean, it's not economically practical. Pollution aside, I think pollution is a greater issue than climate effect, but people should be able to move their RVs somewhere and have a conference and do something positive. Society hasn't even tapped its potential. As I try to close here, what is possible for people to do when they congregate? Regarding music, regarding intelligence, regarding news gathering and reporting, regarding food, regarding growing food, not just the cooking and preparation, all different types of things that could be built to be sold, all different types of tiny homes, for example. How far can we stretch the imagination, and how much of that is being done now? All that really is needed is for a willing society to expand its consciousness enough to will it in a manifestation. I feel like that's what we're waiting for. I don't know what else is going to make it happen. Think about this, though, in the meantime. Left to humanity's own devices in a more conscious setting, what is possible?